Good evening. Nearly 30 years ago, a young black schoolboy, Stephen Lawrence, was murdered in a racially motivated attack on a London street and led the nation to begin to search its soul on the question of race.
We have the results of a major exclusive poll for ITV, setting out the experiences of black and ethnic minority people across our country in 2020.
Tonight, we ask, when it comes to racism, has Britain changed? And from the world of politics, Shaun Bailey, who sits on the London Assembly and is the Conservative candidate for London Mayor. Those people aren't convinced?
I'm not surprised by the poll, but I think things have got better. But what it is, we're changing. They have not changed, they are changing. There's work to be done. There is a higher expectation about what racism means. When I was younger, people would call you all manner of things to your face, and that was perceived as OK. Now it isn't. But young people now are talking about glass ceilings. Young people are talking about the perception of what's possible for their future.
OK, Shaun, in a year, you're standing for London Mayor, you might be in charge of them, certainly in the Metropolitan Police. What do you say to Shante?
I say Shante has to understand the journey. I actually do think black police officers from all backgrounds is important, because that's how you change culture. And who is in the police force is very important, because it's that day-to-day interaction. So as a youth worker for 20 years, I spent much of my time dealing with young people and the police. And what makes the difference day-to-day, who eventually ends up in court, is that first contact with the police officer. And that understanding of a community and doing the right thing for a young person or old person is very important. So the amount of black police officers and also black people across the judiciary system is important. I think it makes a difference. But there is a point which Chantal is right, and it's about retention. It's about development. When you're a young black person, what gives you some kind of affinity with a thing is see people at senior level. When you're at school, you know, black teachers, black head teachers. When you talk about the police, where's our first black, police commissioner? That's the kind of thing. Okay. And not just the first, a continuation of senior faces who are black.
Where do you stand on Black Lives Matter?
I think for me there's two things. The video and what it represents is abhorrent, and everybody knew that. I think what you're seeing now with that age breakdown is the expectations of people. So for young people, the impact is a conversation. It's being had, and that's allied to the fact that they already were moving away from racism. For older people, it's a challenge to some of their beliefs. So people are saying, well, hold on a minute, I wasn't involved in this conversation about racism. I don't feel involved in this. I don't feel responsible. And it goes back to a point that John made. The racism that we talk about in institutions, etc., actually rests in people, and that needs to be managed. That needs to be looked at. This is a battle for hearts and minds. People are going to have to make personal change for us to move forward. I think it's less simple than Shanta saying. So, for instance, if you took the money away from the police, that had an impact on our community, a very profound negative impact. That's the first thing.
The police have a negative impact on our community anyway.
Even if that's correct, this would be significantly worse. That's my belief. The other thing as well, Black Lives Matter has the challenge of making sure its message isn't hijacked. What I want for my children is for their future not to have this conversation. What I want for my children is when they go to school, nobody puts a lid on what their future can be. When Black Lives Matter talks about those things, it's effective, it's right. But when it has an exclusive conversation that excludes people, when it uses words like, white privilege, etc. I grew up with lots of white boys who have no privilege, and that doesn't work for them.
No, we need to be radical about our language, because do you know what? This country is too polite. We've been too polite about racism, but people are dying.
Yeah, but
so we can no longer play to the sensibilities of British people, and we have to name our demons.
It goes
if it is white privilege, if it's racism, if it's white supremacy, let's call it what it is and let's tackle it. Let's stop dancing around it.
It goes to the point made. If you can't have that conversation, you can't involve people.
Hang on. One of the questions that sort of plagues me is that how do we go from talk about teaching history and, black history to tearing down statues?
I think it goes to something that John Barnes has said about perception of black people on a day-to-day level. Our formal education only talks about black people as slaves. If you're a young black person and you hear that, that just generates pain and anger, and it generates who you think you are in the context of Britain. We've done much more than that. And it goes to Chantal's point, where is the representation of black people who've done very well? Because then you'd have a different conversation about statues, because removing them doesn't change the history, it doesn't change the future for my children. What we want is practical change, and part of that practical change is having a different conversation about what it is to be black and British. taking a knee has been hugely controversial for people, but I'd say this, it's a personal thing. If an officer wants to take the knee, if senior police officers want to write a letter, which for me was much more important than take a knee, and say they're going to come out and try and support black people and understand the changes that we're after, I think that's a good thing. And this moment in time mustn't be lost in an argument about the past. When I talk to young people, they're much more interested about what we do next, not the fact that I spent my youth dodging the NF on my estate. Like, well, great, I mean, what's happened now?
What does everyone here feel about taking the knee? I mean, would you take the knee, Shaun?
As a black man, I've been taking the knee my whole life. What is it going to change? A black man looks at me taking the knee, he's like, yeah, stroll on, we know about you. It's not going to change anything. I'm hopeful because we have to be for our children. If we want our society to progress, our children have to see that we're giving them a direction that will go down, that's positive. And I think an action we can take, we asked how we could change policing. What we should be doing is making senior police officers mentor young black recruits through that process, and they should be measured on it. People do what they're measured on, and that's a change you could make, Helen, that would really deliver change for black children in London.